Can you even read? Darius Fleming's voice cut through the elegant dining room like a knife. Aaliyah Morris stood frozen, holding her notepad, her pen trembling slightly in her hand. I'm sorry, sir, she managed. I said, Darius repeated louder, making sure everyone in the restaurant could hear, can you even read? Because you've gotten my order wrong 3 times now, and I'm starting to think you're illiterate. The restaurant went silent. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died. Every eye in the room turned toward the tall black woman in the server's uniform and the billionaire in the $1,000 suit who just called her stupid. Aaliyah took a slow breath. Then she looked at Darius Fleming directly in the eyes and said, in perfect Mandarin, 我能读懂，我也能说5种语言，你只能说1种，但你用它来伤害人。I can read. I can also speak 5 languages. You can only speak 1, and you use it to hurt people. Darius blinked, confused. She switched to French, her voice steady and clear. Monsieur, j'ai un doctorat en linguistique. Votre insulte révèle votre ignorance, pas la mienne. Sir, I have a PhD in linguistics. Your insult reveals your ignorance, not mine. Then Spanish. Soy más educada que la mayoría de las personas en este restaurante, incluyéndote a ti. I am more educated than most people in this restaurant, including you. Then Arabic. Anti rajulun thari, laknaka fakir fil lutf. You are a wealthy man, but you are poor in kindness. And finally, she returned to English, her voice quiet but devastating. I can read just fine, Mr. Fleming. I can read in 5 languages, actually. I have a PhD in applied linguistics from Georgetown University, and right now, I'm reading you perfectly. You're a man who measures people's worth by their job title instead of their character. The silence that followed was absolute. Darius Fleming, tech billionaire, venture capitalist, man used to being the smartest person in every room, sat there with his mouth open, unable to form a single word. And Aaliyah Morris, the waitress he'd just called illiterate, had just destroyed him using nothing but truth. In 5 languages. You just watched a billionaire humiliate a waitress, and then get educated in 5 different languages. But you don't know why a woman with a PhD from Georgetown is serving tables. You don't know what Darius Fleming did that made her expose him so completely. And you don't know what happens when the video of this confrontation goes viral. If you need to understand how someone brilliant can become invisible, if you want to see what happens when the person you underestimate turns out to be the most educated person in the room, then stay with me. Because this story is about to show you that intelligence isn't measured by your job title. It's measured by how you treat people who can't fight back. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see what happens next. Now, let me take you back to 8 months ago. To the day Aaliyah Morris became invisible. Aaliyah Morris had been invisible for exactly 8 months. Not literally invisible, but the kind of invisible that happens when people see your uniform before they see your face, when they see waitress and stop looking for anything else. She worked at the Sterling Room, one of Washington D.C.'s most exclusive restaurants, the kind of place where senators dined with lobbyists, where tech moguls made billion-dollar deals over $30 steaks, where Supreme Court justices celebrated in private rooms. Aaliyah had served them all, and not one of them had ever looked at her long enough to see who she really was. She was 28 years old, stood 5'9" in her sensible work shoes, and wore her natural hair pulled back in a tight bun per restaurant policy. Her uniform was always crisp, her smile always professional, her voice always polite. She was perfect at being invisible, but she hadn't always been this way. 8 months ago, Dr. Aaliyah Morris had been teaching linguistics at Howard University. She'd had a PhD from Georgetown, publications in academic journals, a research grant studying code switching in multilingual communities. She'd spoken 5 languages fluently: English, Mandarin, French, Spanish, and Arabic. She'd spent summers in Beijing, a year in Paris, 6 months in Cairo. She'd been brilliant, respected, on track for tenure. And then her mother got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came fast and brutal. 6 months to live, maybe less. Aaliyah's father had died when she was 12. Her mother, Diane Morris, was all she had left. The woman who'd worked 2 jobs to put her through undergrad, who'd celebrated when Aaliyah got her PhD, who'd cried proud tears at her first university lecture. The medical bills came faster than insurance could cover them. Experimental treatments, clinical trials, specialists, care facilities, the kind of care that costs 6 figures and buys you maybe 3 more months. Aaliyah had burned through her savings in 60 days. She'd taken out loans, maxed credit cards, sold everything she owned that wasn't essential. And when her mother died anyway, peacefully at home with Aaliyah holding her hand, she'd been left with $180,000 in medical debt. The university had been sympathetic but clear. They couldn't hold her position indefinitely. When she'd asked for a semester leave to handle her mother's estate and her finances, they'd suggested she consider it a resignation. "We'll provide a reference," the department chair had said, "but we need to fill the position." So Aaliyah had lost her mother and her career in the same month. She'd applied for academic positions at other universities, but hiring cycles are slow and debt collectors are fast. She'd needed income immediately. The Sterling Room had been hiring. The pay was good, better than most restaurants because of the wealthy clientele and their generous tips. The hours were flexible enough that she could interview for real jobs during the day. "It's temporary," she'd told herself on her first shift. That was 8 months ago. She was still serving tables, still invisible, still drowning in debt despite working 6 days a week. The academic jobs had dried up. "Overqualified," they said when they bothered to respond. Or, "We're looking for someone with more recent teaching experience." How was she supposed to get recent experience when she was working 60-hour weeks just to make minimum payments on her mother's medical debt? So she'd stopped telling people about her PhD, stopped mentioning Georgetown, stopped explaining that she spoke 5 languages. Because when you're wearing a server's uniform, people don't want to hear about your doctorate. It makes them uncomfortable, makes them question why someone so educated is bringing them bread. Better to be invisible, better to be nobody, at least until tonight. Darius Fleming had arrived at 7:30 p.m. with 4 associates, tech investors, from the sound of their conversation. He'd been loud from the moment he walked in, the kind of loud that says, "I'm important, and everyone should know it." He'd sent back his wine twice, complained about the temperature of his water, changed his order 3 times. Aaliyah had handled it all with professional grace. She'd learned early in her serving career that some people treated waitstaff terribly specifically to show their dining companions how powerful they were. Darius Fleming was one of those people. The first time she brought his steak, he'd cut into it, taken 1 bite, and declared it overdone. "I said medium rare," he'd snapped. "This is medium. Can you not tell the difference?" "I apologize, sir," Aaliyah had said smoothly. "I'll have the kitchen prepare another." The second steak came back medium rare, perfect, according to the chef. Darius had cut into it, chewed thoughtfully, then shaken his head. "Now it's underdone. Jesus Christ. How hard is it to cook a steak?" His associates had laughed uncomfortably. Aaliyah had remained calm. "I'm very sorry, sir. Would you like to order something else from the menu?" "I want," Darius had said slowly, like he was talking to a child, "a medium rare steak, cooked properly. Do you understand those words?" "Yes, sir." The third steak came out perfect. The chef himself had checked it twice. Darius had looked at it, looked at Aaliyah, and then said the words that changed everything. "Can you even read? Because you've gotten my order wrong 3 times now, and I'm starting to think you're illiterate." And Aaliyah Morris, PhD in applied linguistics, fluent in 5 languages, woman who'd published research papers and taught university courses, had felt something inside her crack. Not break, not yet, just crack. For 8 months, she'd been invisible. For 8 months, she'd swallowed her pride, her education, her voice. For 8 months, she'd let people treat her like she was nothing because she needed the paycheck. But in that moment, staring at Darius Fleming's smug face, she made a decision. She was done being invisible. The first language Aaliyah chose was deliberate, Mandarin. Because she'd noticed one of Darius's associates was Chinese American, and she wanted him to understand every word. 我能读懂，我也能说5种语言，你只能说1种，但你用它来伤害人。I can read. I can also speak 5 languages. You can only speak 1, and you use it to hurt people. The Chinese investor's eyes went wide. He understood, perfectly. Darius just stared at her, confused. "What did you just—" She switched to French before he could finish. "Monsieur, j'ai un doctorat en linguistique. Votre insulte révèle votre ignorance, pas la mienne." "Sir, I have a PhD in linguistics. Your insult reveals your ignorance, not mine. One of the other associates, a woman who'd been silent most of the meal, straightened in her seat. She'd understood, too. Darius's face was turning red. I don't know what you think you're... Spanish next. Smooth, fluid, perfect Castilian accent. Soy más educada que la mayoría de las personas en este restaurante, incluyéndote a ti. I am more educated than most people in this restaurant, including you. The server at the next table, a young man from Colombia, had stopped refilling water glasses and was staring at Aaliyah with his mouth open. Then Arabic, because she'd overheard Darius on a phone call earlier bragging about a deal he'd closed in Dubai without bothering to learn a word of the local language. أنت رجل ثري لكنك فقير في اللطف. You are a wealthy man, but you are poor in kindness. The entire restaurant had gone silent now, every table watching, every server frozen in place. And finally, Aaliyah returned to English. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence, everyone heard every word. I can read just fine, Mr. Fleming. I can read in 5 languages, actually. English, Mandarin, French, Spanish, and Arabic. I have a PhD in applied linguistics from Georgetown University. I've published 14 peer-reviewed articles. I've taught at Howard University. I've given lectures in 4 countries. She paused, letting that sink in. And right now, I'm reading you perfectly. You're a man who measures people's worth by their job title instead of their character. You're someone who needs to humiliate others to feel important. And you're the kind of person who assumes that because I'm serving you dinner, I must be stupid. Darius's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. For your information, Aaliyah continued, I got your order right all 3 times. The kitchen prepared exactly what you requested. You sent it back because you enjoy watching people scramble to please you. Because it makes you feel powerful. She set her notepad down on the table. But here's what you don't understand, Mr. Fleming. I'm not stupid. I'm not illiterate. I'm not less than you because I'm wearing this uniform. I'm a woman with a doctorate who's working this job because I spent $180,000 trying to save my mother's life and lost her anyway. Her voice cracked slightly on the word mother, but she didn't stop. I've worked here for 8 months. I've served senators, judges, CEOs, people with real power, and not one of them treated me the way you just did. Not one of them looked at me and saw nothing. She turned to his associates. For the record, gentlemen, and ma'am, Mr. Fleming's Mandarin is terrible. I heard him on a conference call earlier trying to greet his Beijing partners. He said ni hao instead of ni hao. He asked them how their knees were. The Chinese investor made a choking sound that might have been a laugh. His French is non-existent, despite him telling you earlier that he practically lived in Paris. I heard him mispronounce hors d'oeuvres as horse dovers. The French-speaking woman was definitely smiling now. And his Spanish, Aaliyah continued, is limited to dos cervezas, por favor, which he said to me earlier with an accent so bad I thought he was asking for 2 hearts. The Colombian server was openly grinning. So, when Mr. Fleming calls me illiterate, Aaliyah said, what he really means is that he's intimidated by people who are smarter than him. And rather than admit that, he tries to make them feel small. She looked directly at Darius. But I'm done being small. I'm done being invisible. And I'm done letting people like you treat me like I'm nothing. She untied her apron and set it on the table. I quit. And she walked out of the Sterling room with her head high, leaving Darius Fleming sitting in shocked silence, his expensive dinner getting cold, his reputation in tatters. The Chinese investor spoke first in Mandarin. 我认为我们不应和这个人做生意. I don't think we should do business with this man. The French-speaking woman nodded. Agreed. Someone who treats service staff like that? I don't want him anywhere near my company. She stood, gathering her things. Mr. Fleming, I'm withdrawing from this deal. Good luck finding other investors. One by one, his associates left the table, and Darius Fleming sat alone, surrounded by the ruins of his dinner and his credibility, realizing he'd just lost a $50 million deal because he couldn't treat a waitress with basic human respect. Someone at the next table held up their phone. They'd recorded the whole thing. Here's what destroys me about this moment. Aaliyah Morris wasn't fighting for money. She wasn't trying to embarrass Darius Fleming. She wasn't looking for revenge. She was fighting to be seen. For 8 months, she'd been invisible. She let people walk past her, dismiss her, treat her like furniture, because she needed the job. Because debt doesn't care about your dignity. But there's a limit to how small you can make yourself before you disappear entirely. And when Darius called her illiterate, he didn't just insult her intelligence. He erased her. He looked at her and decided she was nothing. Decided that because she wore an apron, she couldn't possibly have a brain. How many of you have been made invisible by someone who decided you weren't worth seeing? How many of you have been dismissed because of your job, your clothes, your age, your accent? How many of you have stayed quiet when someone treated you like garbage because you couldn't afford to speak up? Subscribe if you believe that every person deserves to be seen, that the woman serving your coffee might have a PhD, that the man cleaning your office might speak 4 languages, that worth isn't measured by job titles, it's measured by how you treat people who can't do anything for you. The video hit Twitter at 9:47 p.m. By 10:30 p.m., it had 200,000 views. By midnight, 2 million. The caption read, "Billionaire calls Waitress illiterate. She responds in 5 languages and quits on the spot. This is the most satisfying thing you'll see today." The internet exploded. Journalists started digging into Darius Fleming's background, and what they found wasn't pretty. Darius Fleming, founder of Fleming Ventures, had built his reputation as a self-made tech billionaire. But reporters discovered he'd actually inherited $20 million from his father and lied about it for years. His company's biggest success, an AI translation app called LinguaFlow, had been stolen intellectual property from a Georgetown University research project, a project that Dr. Aaliyah Morris had worked on during her PhD. The Washington Post broke the story 36 hours after the video went viral. Fleming Ventures built empire on stolen academic research. The article detailed how Darius had attended a Georgetown linguistics conference in 2019, accessed proprietary research without authorization, and launched LinguaFlow 6 months later using algorithms developed by Georgetown professors and graduate students, including Aaliyah Morris. He'd made $400 million from that app. The researchers had made nothing. By day 3, Aaliyah's phone was ringing constantly. News outlets, talk shows, legal firms offering to represent her pro bono in a lawsuit against Fleming Ventures. She ignored most of them, but one call made her pause. "Dr. Morris, my name is Elena Vasquez. I'm the CEO of Meridian International. I saw your video. I'd like to offer you a position." "I appreciate that," Aaliyah said tiredly, "but I'm not looking for charity." "It's not charity," Elena interrupted. "It's strategy. We're expanding our global communications division. We need someone who understands linguistics, cultural nuance, and can speak directly to international partners. Your PhD, your language skills, your research on code switching, that's exactly what we need." She paused. "Salary starts at $180,000. Full benefits. Student loan assistance program that'll cover your debts within 2 years." Aaliyah's breath caught. $180,000, the exact amount she owed. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Because you're brilliant," Elena said simply. "And because I'm tired of watching brilliant people become invisible because they had the audacity to have medical emergencies or family crises. You deserve better than that." Let me tell you something about the video that went viral. It wasn't satisfying because Aaliyah humiliated Darius Fleming. It was satisfying because she made herself visible. For 8 months, she'd been a ghost. A woman with a PhD, serving steaks to people who didn't see her as human. And in 90 seconds, speaking 5 languages, she forced the entire world to see her. Not as a waitress, not as a servant, but as a brilliant multilingual scholar who'd been beaten down by circumstances beyond her control and refused to stay down. How many brilliant people do you walk past every day without seeing them? How many PhDs are driving Ubers because the academic job market collapsed? How many former engineers are stocking shelves because they had a medical crisis? How many people are one catastrophe away from invisibility? Subscribe if you believe that we should build a world where people don't have to choose between saving someone they love and destroying their own future. Where medical debt doesn't erase decades of education. Where intelligence and worth aren't measured by job titles. Because Aaliyah shouldn't have had to speak 5 languages to be treated with basic respect. She should have been respected when she spoke one. Within a week, Darius Fleming's empire began to crumble. 3 major investors pulled out of Fleming Ventures, citing ethical concerns. The company's stock dropped 40%. Georgetown University filed a lawsuit for intellectual property theft. LinguaFlow users started a mass boycott. The app's rating dropped from 4.8 stars to 1.2 overnight. Darius tried to do damage control. He posted an apology video that his PR team had clearly written. "I sincerely apologize for my inappropriate comments to Dr. Morris. I was having a stressful day and took out my frustration on someone who didn't deserve it. I'm committed to doing better." The internet tore it apart. Having a stressful day doesn't make you call someone illiterate. Notice he only apologized after finding out she had a PhD. If she'd actually been just a waitress, he wouldn't care. He's sorry he got caught, not sorry for what he did. The Sterling Room released a statement. "We are appalled by Mr. Fleming's treatment of our former staff member. Dr. Morris was a valued employee, and we deeply regret that she felt compelled to resign. Mr. Fleming is no longer welcome at our establishment." Former employees started coming forward with their own stories. A paralegal he'd called too stupid to understand legal documents. An intern he'd mocked for her accent. A receptionist he'd insisted couldn't possibly have gone to college. A pattern emerged. Darius Fleming treated anyone he perceived as beneath him with contempt. And now, finally, there were consequences. His board of directors called an emergency meeting. They asked him to step down as CEO. He refused. They voted him out anyway. Fleming Ventures announced his departure with a terse press release. "The board and Mr. Fleming have mutually agreed to part ways. We are committed to rebuilding trust with our stakeholders and partners." Darius was 40 years old, newly unemployed, and toxic enough that no major company would touch him. The man who'd built an empire by stealing other people's work was learning what it felt like to lose everything. And Aaliyah Morris, the woman he'd called illiterate, was being interviewed on CNN. 3 months later, Aaliyah sat in her new office at Meridian International, reviewing documents for an upcoming negotiation with a Japanese tech firm. Her title, Director of Global Linguistic Strategy. Her salary had covered her medical debt with enough left over to finally breathe. She'd published an op-ed in the New York Times about medical debt and the PhD to poverty pipeline. Congress was actually considering legislation. Life was good, better than good, and then her assistant knocked on her door. "Dr. Morris, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." "Who is it?" The assistant hesitated. "Darius Fleming." Aaliyah's first instinct was to say no, to have security escort him out, to never see that man again. But curiosity won. "Send him in." Darius Fleming looked different, smaller somehow. He wore a simple suit, expensive but not flashy. No Rolex, no designer shoes. He looked humbled. "Dr. Morris," he said, standing awkwardly in her doorway. "Thank you for seeing me. I haven't decided if I'm seeing you or just watching you apologize," Aaliyah said. "What do you want?" "I want to make this right," Darius said. "I know I can't undo what I did. I know 1,000 apologies won't change how I treated you, but I'm trying to be better." "How's that going for you?" The sarcasm was sharp. "Poorly," he admitted. "I've lost my company, my reputation, most of my friends. I deserved all of it." He pulled out a folder. "I've been working with a legal team. We're settling Georgetown's lawsuit. Part of the settlement includes compensation for every researcher whose work was used in LinguaFlow." He slid the folder across her desk. "Including you. You're owed $4.7 million in back royalties and damages." Aaliyah stared at the number. "This doesn't buy my forgiveness," she said quietly. "I know. I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm here to do what's right." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I've started volunteering, teaching financial literacy at community centers, helping people understand predatory loans, medical debt, the kind of systems that make brilliant people invisible." He looked back at her. "I'm not asking you to think I'm a good person. I'm just trying to become less of a terrible one." Aaliyah studied him for a long moment. Then she made a decision that surprised even herself. "Sit down, Mr. Fleming." He sat. "I'm working on something," Aaliyah said. a nonprofit. It's called the Diane Morris Foundation, named after my mother. The mission is to provide financial support to graduate students and PhDs facing medical crises, so they don't have to choose between saving someone they love and destroying their career. She pulled up a document on her computer. I'm using the settlement money to fund it, but I need advisors, people who understand business, finance, investment, people who've made mistakes and learned from them. She looked at him. I don't forgive you. I might never forgive you, but I believe people can change if they actually do the work. So here's my offer. Volunteer for the foundation. Use your business expertise to help the people your old worldview would have dismissed. Prove that you meant what you said about becoming better. Darius stared at her in disbelief. You want me to work for your foundation after what I did? I want you to work with people you used to look down on, Aaliyah corrected. I want you to sit across from a PhD candidate drowning in medical debt and see them as human. I want you to help a brilliant scholar who's working 3 jobs and remember that intelligence has nothing to do with income. She leaned forward. You don't get redemption, Mr. Fleming, but you get an opportunity to be useful, to take the privilege and knowledge you have and use it to help people instead of hurt them. Darius's eyes were wet. Why would you give me this chance? Because my mother taught me something, Aaliyah said. She said the world is full of people who hurt others because they've never been taught how to help, and the only way to change that is to show them there's another way. She extended her hand. So, are you ready to learn? Darius took her hand, his voice shaking. Yes, thank you. Yes. 2 years later, the Diane Morris Foundation had helped 347 graduate students and PhDs avoid financial collapse during family medical crises. Darius Fleming ran the financial advisory board. He'd restructured his remaining wealth to support the foundation and lived modestly, not in penance, but in purpose. He never tried to befriend Aaliyah, never asked for forgiveness, just showed up, did the work, and slowly became the kind of person who helped instead of hurt. And Aaliyah Morris, the woman who'd been called illiterate, had built something her mother would be proud of, a foundation that made brilliant people visible. That said, your worth isn't your job title. Your value isn't your bank account. Your intelligence isn't measured by your circumstances. And every person, even the ones serving your dinner, deserves to be seen. Here's what Aaliyah understood that most of us don't. Revenge would have felt good for about 10 minutes. Watching Darius Fleming suffer, seeing his empire collapse, knowing she'd contributed to his downfall, that would have been satisfying. But it wouldn't have changed anything. It wouldn't have helped the next PhD student facing medical debt. It wouldn't have made the world softer for people in crisis. It wouldn't have honored her mother's memory. So instead of revenge, she chose transformation. Not the easy kind that lets people off the hook, but the hard kind that says, you hurt me, you were wrong, and now you're going to spend years proving you can be better. Darius didn't get forgiveness. He got work, hard, humbling work that required him to sit with people he used to dismiss and see them as human. That's not weakness. That's power. Subscribe if you believe that the strongest thing you can do isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's transforming them into someone who helps instead of harms. Because maybe that's how we actually change the world, one reformed person at a time. This is the story of Aaliyah Morris and Darius Fleming, a woman who spoke 5 languages but was called illiterate, and a man who spoke only 1 but used it to wound. She could have destroyed him, should have destroyed him. But she gave him something more valuable than revenge. She gave him a chance to become the kind of person who lifts people up instead of tearing them down. And in doing so, she proved that true intelligence isn't measured in languages spoken or degrees earned. It's measured in grace extended even when it's not deserved, especially when it's not deserved. The end.